Hi, my name is Papandreou and I'm the founder of Emerging Transport Advisors. It's my honor to be invited to speak at the first SEJONG SMARTCITY Forum and share with you my thoughts on future-proofing our cities through smart mobility strategy. A little bit about myself and my company. I've worked in mobility for more than 15 years, covering both public and private and all forms of moving people and goods. Emerging Transport Advisors was founded to provide investors, companies, governments, and institutions clarity around guidance on how to best position themselves for the great shared, electric, and automated change coming to the transport system. When it comes to the movement of people and things, the last 5 years have seen more transformation than the previous 50. The next 10 promise to upend and profoundly accelerate that change. The sea transition will upend how we traditionally plan, design, operate, finance, and manage our transport rights of way in cities and beyond. This presentation will focus on how cities and governments can prepare their cities for these major changes to ensure equitable and resilient outcomes. Since the invention of the wheel, civilizations have relied on transport. Transportation connects people and things to the moments in their lives. Our way of life depends on a functioning transportation network. And transportation cuts across all aspects of our life. Its role is to connect us to the moments in our lives. Transportation connects peoples and things to the moments in their lives. Our way of life depends on a functioning transportation network. Transportation networks move people, things, and they do things. Transportation networks provide key functions for our society, whether it's moving people by road, rail, air, or sea, by moving things by road, sea, rail, or air, or by doing things. The wheels that move agriculture, mining, construction, and municipal services. Transportation is based on specific business models that are enabled by deliberate policy and funding mechanisms. There are 3 main ways we provide transportation in our cities. You own, you ride, or you rent. They're not all working very well due to upstream and downstream subsidies, causing major distortions in unit economics and viability. These hidden subsidies have pretty major side effects. We need to change the way we do transport. The intersections are not single modal issues. The individual ownership, fossil fuel powered and manually operated, dominates the market myths of freedom and status. We didn't love our cars. We have been made to love them through marketing and upstream fuels, car manufacturing, road streams, and single-use zoning, and downstream subsidies, parking, street allocation design, road rules that favor driving, etc. These all make other forms very difficult to use or not viable to provide. But when everybody buys into this ownership model, we get major side effects. People spending on average 10 days of their lives stuck in traffic, wasting billions of dollars in lost economic productivity. We generate harmful air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions while straining our economy, our environment, and our society. These cause over 1.2 million preventable fatalities each year through car crashes. Transportation policies have done harm and segregated, discriminated, and forced marginalized groups to suffer the brunt of the externalities, especially the pending climate risks, creating employment barriers for those who are not able to operate them, and requiring expensive and physically disruptive infrastructure, exacerbating social, economic, and physical barriers to vulnerable communities. So we're in this cycle of private vehicle dependency, where we have car-oriented transportation planning, creates reduced travel options, other modes are stigmatized, city disinvestment, more car-oriented land use planning, more free parking requirements, more dispersed development patterns, increased private vehicle ownership, and the vicious cycle of more inequities, budget impacts, crashes and fatalities, congestion, air pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions. But the world is changing and disrupting this owned, fossil fuel-powered and manually operated dominant transport system. There is digitization, mobility as a service, electrification, and automation. The last decade, these are a number of major trends that are already underway, disrupting most of the owned, fossil fuel-powered, and manually operated dominant transportation system. Most of these changes could have potentially beneficial impacts. They could also perpetuate the inequalities and the problems of the past and the current issues. This is why we need a holistic approach for cities. The world has changed from the impact of the pandemic for over a year now. It's not going back to normal, and we're living in a very volatile time without any of the typical indicators. This is a prescient photo in San Francisco of our reality. Those that can work from home, those that are deemed essential, and those that must go to work and the in-between. COVID has upended life as we know it. So much tragedy has struck our lives, from the lost ones, loved ones, the lost jobs, the lost connections, and seeing our family and friends. We saw major disruption to our transportation systems both locally and globally, and yet the movement of packages and things still has to keep going. It wasn't the same everywhere, though we all felt the shift. It's not going back to normal like we knew it in 2019, and we're living in a volatile time without any of these typical indicators that we've had. It's also uneven across the world and not the same for everyone, especially by class, by race, by age, and physical abilities. Our transport system was not equitable before COVID, and it certainly isn't now. This is our reality. Those that can work from home, those that are deemed essential and must go to work, and those who are mobility providers who not only need to show up, but move people around and everything in between. For those that are more comfortable in the digital or remote work, they have been safe at home, waiting out the virus and hoping for a return to a new in-person life. But the other workers who must go to work every day to deliver our goods, to make things to operate, to manage the real world, have been exposed to many of the issues that the digital workers just haven't. And this was San Francisco 6 months later. The pandemic is a warning signal for the need for more resilient cities with the glowing and growing climate crisis. Transportation modes and their propulsion have very specific impacts to our environment. This goes beyond, let's just electrify it. We call out driving trucks, SUVs, and cars as the main source of transport GHGs. Electrifying public transit is nice for air quality and noise, but doesn't move the needle on climate like electrifying larger freight and passenger car numbers. Growing GHGs from transportation is primarily caused by private SUVs and trucks. Innovation is not investing something new. It's making something better by removing friction, getting together to solve problems. Innovation is to figure out what something is useful for. Now, a lot of people say, let's get back to normal. But normal wasn't working for many people. It was exclusive, it was discriminatory, and accelerating the climate crisis. We need to change the way we move people and things to support a more healthy, equitable, and resilient society. The culture of work has been upended. Working from home for the category of workers that can is the most important and significant change that can and will stay and will be normalized. We've shifted from commuting to computing, And that's a huge permanent change. People will now choose whether they want to stay at home a few days a week, or come in a few days a week. Many companies have found that this is working and will delay re-entry as long as they can. They have to retrofit workspaces and will pause until they have to. So we're seeing a shift in the mindset from the user on our transport system to what does the customer, person or thing need to make their journey if they decide to travel. Digital transformation is inside and out. Everything goes to the cloud, and edge computing offers a variety of approaches for innovative applications and enhancements to the user experience in and outside the vehicle. What's missing? What can we do? How can we partner with that? How do we make that happen? What's in the way? How do we remove that or get around it? Key questions. So as we look at this, we look at reducing harm, avoid, shift, and improve. We need to draw on these holistic systems approach, principles of best practice, transportation policy, to create a robust program of actions. So what does this look like? Well, we have to go back to our streets. We have to prioritize what determines and what outcome we get. Private cars are used 5% of the day, and they're parked the other 95%. Walking only needs less than 1 square meter of space per person. Bicycling needs less than 2 square meters of space per person. But a car needs 8 square meters to park it, and then it needs 16 square meters fully for parking. And it needs 64 square meters moving one person, because that is the average occupancy, even though there is room for 5. Its transportation street space by mode is a forgotten side effect of these policies and adds to the issues of congestion and sprawl. It's a geometry issue. We simply can't fit all the privately owned cars with one person in our cities. Something has to give. Even if they are all electric, the extra roadway and concrete for parking are embedded GHGs, creating a path to automobile dependency and adding to our climate crisis. So here are some key phases of restorative transformation. What we do know is that we are going through a series of phases right now. We had the event trigger that caused us to shut down. We still created distributed but connected workplaces, and there was a very high dependence on the company's VPN IT stability. Some were vulnerable. We entered this peak phase where we triaged all operations, focused on customer support and community service. We retrained and we redeployed and we retooled certain products for immediate needs. We've shifted into the pivot phase, where we are reformatting our models to match the shut-in economy, testing, updating, and validating different model ideas. Some of us are moving into the recovery phase. We're reintegrating into the real world, data-driven expansion, while keeping most systems virtual for now. I look forward to the transforming phase, where we have things like the Green New Deal, supply chain resiliency, new models centered on digital transformation. Everything has public holiday load and demand. No peaks. This is not a V-shaped curve. It will be bumpy and have lots of twists and turns. Companies and agencies that understand this will be able to navigate the path forward. SEJONG is starting and lucky fresh. A smart city strategy is less about the technology and more about the people and how they will move in the most efficient, safest, affordable, and greenest ways. This means that transport policy for SEJONG needs to be fully integrated with land use. Land uses, density, parking infrastructure, these determine how far and what mode most people will choose. The bigger the roads and the more parking provided, the greater chance people will choose to drive, and this will hurt the city's air, noise, and community needs. The opposite will happen if there are clear and accessible walking, bicycling, and transit priority street networks. People will choose what makes it safe, convenient, and affordable. This smart mobility system has been very effective at changing behavior, increasing health and wellness, financial affordability for the residents, and revenue for the city budget, while reducing pollution and other negative effects of transportation. It also provides a platform for all the future innovations to work together, whether it is digitization and data management, new shared mobility services, say e-bikes or e-scooters, automated vehicle services for robotaxi, public transport or deliveries like the BRT, or for new systems yet to be invented. As long as these are the priority networks in the street and those systems and technologies can support these community outcomes, then Sejong will be continued to be smart city. And we're seeing this, a city governance paradigm shift. Cities are re-examining transport policies and priorities to undo the mistakes of the past by focusing on connecting people, not moving vehicles. Too much attention on the potential rather than what we know works. We need the both for a more sustainable and resilient future. There is a lot of news and press on the shiny new things, and that is great. But in order for these things to work, we need to do the heavy work of making our streets safer, with less speeding, manage congestion and demand for our streets, with more priority for walking, bicycling, and public transport. Together, these tools will enable higher tech to flourish and add value to cities like Sejong and not distract them. So it is important that Sejong creates an environment where the basics of city life are implemented as a foundational layer, which means good walking, good bicycling, and good public transport services, strong and fast train connections to Seoul and other regions, while provisioning new concepts and pilots for electric and automated mobility options, and possibly air taxi and drones in the future. To do this, we need a new pricing and funding model. Our government funding is all designed around the fossil fuel powered and manually operated system. We get gasoline taxes, we get vehicle purchase fees, registration fees, parking fees, speeding tickets, etc. If we have a world where most people share vehicles, they are all electric, and are not driven by people but computers, where will all the money come from to pay for the streets and services that governments get now from all these fees? We will need to shift the model where people pay to use the service and the time on the street and the pickup and the drop-off. Just imagine, we will need to charge a fee based on the time on the street, the location of the pickup or drop-off, and then the type of vehicle used, whether it was an electric bike or a large passenger car or a delivery truck. All of these fees will need to be part of the new digital funding model. This model has started across the world in some cities, from congestion charging, low emission zones, to curbside fees for various transport options. Over time, we will need to introduce these measures as more people switch to electric transport and as we see evidence of more sharing services and finally, automated services. Smart cities need collaborations and community involvement to be successful. Sejong has an opportunity to have a blend of ancient traditions of city layouts and spaces with modern technologies in the background. No government, company, or institution can do this alone. This will take unprecedented collaboration with the community you serve. We have seen many examples of successes when the community is in the center of this transformation. By producing this strategy and educating and including the public and what is happening, they can work together on how to decide to move in a way that shifts from today to a more sustainable future. And academia can help with the research, testing, and analysis to draw on their strengths. But it has to come from the community which you serve, not the other way around. This is where true smart city innovation will lead to take place, working together to figure this out. The regions across the world that are already doing this will not only survive through this, they will thrive. And unfortunately, the ones that don't will suffer a steady decline as people can now work remotely and leave regions altogether. The pressure to make your city smart is only possible if you focus on making it livable, sustainable, and resilient, as this will not only be a social and environmental imperative, but it'll be an economic survival strategy as well. People will move when it feels like a good place to live, good places to hang out, enjoy, learn, play, work, and shop. People say the best places in the world are the places where there is a lot of life on the streets, great plazas, great markets to walk through, great cafes and art and performances. No one says they like sensors or 5G connections or Wi-Fi. That's not what people remember. They remember all those nice moments. This smart city framework is best practice for cities as they grow, and these foundational land use and networks to minimize owning and driving a car. This allows for multiple new businesses, mobility service providers, electrification, and connected and automated technologies together. This is what SEJONG could do and bring together all their great ideas to see these results. This will create a virtuous cycle of equitable mobility. People-oriented transportation planning increases travel option viability, which creates more mode shift from driving, and then more existing community-centered investment and management. There's more mixed-use land use planning, more pricing and fair user fees, more compact development patterns, reduced private vehicle ownership and use, and this virtuous cycle results in more equity, more access, better system efficiency, safer streets and travel, cleaner air, less greenhouse gas emissions, less traffic, and less noise. So, SEJONG is at the early stage of its journey. There is a lot of speculation of what a smart city should be, and few have a strong handle of what is the best practice. What we know is that it is less about Wi-Fi connectivity, data, robots, and machines, which are very important, but they don't make cities. People make cities. The more the city is connected and centered on the people, their connections to nature, to food, and everyday life, their high-quality community spaces where the ancient traditions and modernity are harmoniously blended, where we have high quality of walking, bicycling, and public transport with electric and autonomous robotic technologies managed together with public data management, then we can say we have a smart mobility system that will be able to manage the challenges of today and the future inventions. We have a once-in-a-generation chance on a local and global level to undo the wrongs of the past transportation policies and practices and course correct as we face other looming issues that require much more action, from climate action that will turn further impact transportation systems. There are many unknowns and some upfront strategy work from making the wrong decision that result in lost time and money. So we have our opportunity, and this is an important time to invest. Here are my contact details, and please feel free to contact me. Thank you again for having me speak at the first SEJONG Smart City Forum. Goodbye.